Voxtur just had a press release titled Voxtur announces sale of debt to strategic investors. Now, it took me some time to clearly understand what this press release means. It's obviously very positive, but if I was confused about certain things in the press release, I know this requires a video explaining this, and I talked to Gary and Jordan about it, so I am fairly educated on what all of this means. So remember how many investors were complaining that Voxtur has related party receivables, meaning that Jim Albertelli's law firm is using, or was using, I think it's using, Voxtur's technology to provide its services to its clients. And because of the foreclosure moratorium, Jim's law firm accumulated debt to Voxtur. In other words, Jim's firm owed money to Voxtur, and because of that debt, Voxtur was not able to recognize a portion of revenues in the last quarter that it reported. If you recall, if there was no deferral of revenue during the last quarter, revenues would have been positive. The growth in revenues from quarter to quarter would have been positive instead of negative. And also the company would have been EBITDA positive. But because of that debt, the auditors didn't allow Voxtur to recognize that portion of revenues. So now, with this press release, pretty much that related party receivable is solved. And if you read the first paragraph, Voxtur announced today that the company has completed a sale of the promissory note executed by Jim Albertelli for the benefit of the company with an outstanding balance, this is in US dollars, almost $10 million, for proceeds of about $8 million. So, in other words, what happened was that Jim law firm owed debt to Voxtur. So he signed a promissory note to Voxtur saying, I will pay off this debt balance in, I don't know what the details of that note were, but let's say I will pay it off in 2 years, and that is my promise. So that promissory note for Voxtur, it becomes an asset, right? And then that asset can then be sold to somebody else, right? And then as the outstanding balance here for that note is about $10 million, Voxtur sold this note for cash injection for about $8 million. So took a little bit of a discount, because when you sell a note, you have to take a little bit of a discount. But Voxtur sold that note, which was the asset, and it received about $8 million of cash injection. Now, Jim's law firm, instead of owing the balance to Voxtur, now owes the balance to the buyers of that note. But then, later on in the press release, which in my opinion, it created a confusion, it said that the sale of the note brings 2 strategic investors to Voxtur. So in other words, the buyers of the note are referred in this press release as strategic investors, and I will tell you why. Concurrently with the purchase of the note, Jim's law firm transfers to the purchasers in full satisfaction of the note 39 million shares of the company. So remember, Jim owns about 150 or 160 million shares of Voxtur. So he transferred 39 million shares of Voxtur to the buyer of the note. And I was really confused about it because I was like, okay, he owes money to the holder of the note. And then he transferred 39 million shares to them? Like, are those 39 million shares collateral? No. So what happened is that after Voxtur sold that note to these strategic buyers, Jim paid off that note immediately by giving them 39 million shares of Voxtur. So really what it was, Jim pretty much sold 39 million shares of Voxtur in order to satisfy the debt that it owed to Voxtur. So then you might be like, well, why didn't he just, why did they create this note in the first place? Why didn't he just sell the shares, give them the money, and it would have been a much simpler transaction? Well, apparently, for the audit purposes, and don't argue with me here, in order for Voxtur to be able to recognize the revenue by satisfying or paying off that note, a note receivable had to be created. So this asset had to be created in order for the auditors to say, yes, Voxtur, you can recognize revenues. That's why they did this route. So the note was created, the note was sold to somebody else, and then Jim paid off that note by giving them 39 million shares, and he still owns 100 million or whatever shares. But those 39 million shares, in satisfaction of that note, are in the hands of what they call now in the press release strategic investors. So now, who is this strategic investor? Well, Kevin McCarthy. He is the founding partner of a firm called McCarthy Holthus. McCarthy Holthus. That's the name of the law firm. The website of this law firm is in the description below. But these are the founders. He became the buyer of the note, and because the note was satisfied with 39 million shares of Voxtur, he became a strategic investor in Voxtur. Why is he referred to as strategic investor to Voxtur? Well, because that law firm is on the West Coast of the United States. And then that law firm is bigger than Jim's law firm. And then that law firm will now become a client of Voxtur for the default technology. Okay? That's why they are referred to as strategic investors. So in other words, those strategic investors, Kevin McCarthy, is becoming a shareholder in Voxtur, and he is going to give business to Voxtur by using Voxtur's default technology. So Kevin McCarthy is becoming his own success, right? He became an investor, and he's going to give business to Voxtur, creating more value to Voxtur and creating more value to his own investment. Also in the press release, it says that they revised the service agreement between Jim's law firm and Voxtur so that this kind of accrual doesn't accumulate again and it doesn't become a problem in the future. So even though it might be confusing, obviously this is very positive for Voxtur, and I'm going to again summarize this. Why is this positive? Because the related party receivable has been cleaned up. Voxtur received about $8 million of cash infusion. Because of that cash infusion, past revenue that wasn't recognized will now be recognized. The buyers of the note become investors in Voxtur, and they also become clients of Voxtur. So I hope that this was helpful. This video helped you understand what it means, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below.